Hello, everyone. Tonight, let every worry of the long day slowly recede behind you, like small waves withdrawing from the shore as the tide turns. And together, let's step into an ancient world, a place where the north wind blows across grass-covered roofs, where oil lamps cast a warm glow onto dark wooden planks, and where a Viking village nestled by a fjord is gradually sinking into sleep under a cold and starry sky. In tonight's story, you don't need to try to remember every detail, nor do you need to follow every event closely, because this is not a fast-paced adventure. It is a very slow, very gentle journey, told so that you can relax your body, let go of your mind, and allow sleep to come to you in the most natural way. Take a deep breath very slowly. Feel the cool air enter your chest, and then exhale slowly, as if all the remaining tension in your shoulders, your forehead, and your eyes is quietly dissolving with that breath. If you wish, you can close your eyes right now, or just keep them half open and let the narration carry you away. Tonight we are not in the modern world with its hurried sounds, but in a small village in the far north, where people live close to the sea, close to the forest, close to the fire, close to the darkness, and also very close to deep, quiet, primal rest. Let yourself lie a bit more comfortably. Loosen your jaw, soften your shoulders, let your arms grow heavy, and enter the story together where you will sleep in a Viking village by the dark water's edge, amidst the cold wind, the scent of pine wood, and the gentle firelight of a very long night. As the story begins, the sky has turned to the deep indigo of a northern evening, a color as deep and cool as if it were mixed from cold seawater, thin clouds, and kitchen smoke. You are walking on a hard dirt path, narrow and filled with small stones, running along a low grassy slope down toward a calm fjord. Far below, the village appears in the last remaining light on the horizon. Longhouses with roofs of grass and dark wood lie scattered around a small landing where several longships have been hauled out of the water and tilted sideways to dry. Kitchen smoke rises in thin ribbons, the smell of sea salt mixing with the scent of burning wood and damp, seaweed drifting in the wind. There are no loud noises, no shouting from a bustling harbor like in tales of voyages, because tonight is not a night for battle or raiding. It is a very ordinary, very quiet, very real night in the slow life of a northern village preparing to rest. You have walked all day along the hillsides and forest edges, crossing patches of old snow remaining in shaded spots, traversing a creaky wooden bridge over a small stream flowing toward the sea. And by now, your feet are tired enough to listen only to the silent promise of firelight from the houses below. You are not a warrior, nor a wealthy merchant. You are just a traveler, someone carrying few belongings, a good knife, a thick wool cloak, and enough stories to trade for a seat near the hearth in strange places. In this land, people are not overly easy with strangers. But they are not entirely closed off either, especially on a cold evening when the wind blows in from the fjord and the sun has vanished. There is an unwritten law in such harsh lands. A traveler may be questioned, may be looked at with scrutinizing eyes, but is rarely left entirely out in the night air. If they come in peace and with hands unstained by trouble, the path slopes gradually downward. You can more clearly hear the sound of water gently lapping against the stones, the sound of ropes hitting the sides of boats, the sound of a dog barking far away and then falling silent. In the sky, the first stars have appeared, sharp and cold, hanging high against the deep blue background like small glowing shards of ice. A gust of wind sweeps across the hillside, making the hem of your cloak flutter. But that cold is not unpleasant. It is crisp and clean, enough to wake your mind after the long journey, enough to make the thought of a warm longhouse even more inviting. As you approach the edge of the village, you pass a large pile of firewood carefully stacked under a shelter, some freshly split logs still light in color and smelling of pine resin. By a low fence woven from branches, a small goat looks up at you and then bows its head to chew slowly. Further away, toward the water, a seagull gives a hoarse cry and glides across the darkening surface of the bay. The village is not large. Perhaps only a few dozen houses sit around a central area packed hard by many footsteps, with a tall wooden pole near the pier and a blacksmith's forge with a cooling fire at the edge. The largest longhouse stands slightly apart, its roof thickly thatched, with smoke rising steadily from the smoke hole on top. Light spills through the doorway in small gaps, where the wooden planks don't fit perfectly, creating warm golden streaks on the cold ground. You pause in that courtyard for a moment, not out of fear, but because you are used to giving places time to look back at you. A man carrying a bucket of water passes by. Seeing you, he slows his pace, his eyes quickly scanning from your dust-covered boots to the cloth bag at your side. That gaze is not hostile, just sharp and alert like the sea wind. You nod in greeting in the way of a passerby, saying you are only looking for a place to rest for a night, in exchange for chopping wood, telling stories, or helping with whatever work you can. The man is silent for a moment, then tells you to wait. He sets the water bucket down and enters the longhouse. While waiting, you look around. The doors of other houses open and close. A few figures pass by with bundles of wood or baskets of dried fish. A child wrapped in a thick wool sweater is led by the hand by a mother, walking hurriedly across the cold ground, cheeks rosy from the wind. There is something very ordinary about the scene, very different from the violent image people often associate with Vikings. Here, at this moment, they are not names in legends, but people living through an evening, cooking, lighting fires, cleaning, calling children inside, closing doors against the night wind. And it is that very ordinariness that makes this place more comfortable, as if you have just stepped into a rarely told part of the world. The part that isn't loud or bloody, but only smells of baking bread, dry wool, and golden firelight on wood. The man returns with an older woman, tall and strong-shouldered, her silver-streaked hair tied neatly at the nape of her neck. She looks at you longer, but her gaze has the practical judgment of someone who has seen all sorts of people walk through her door. You repeat your request for a place to sleep, adding that you will leave early tomorrow and are willing to work before you go if needed. She nods briefly, saying that tonight the wind will turn and grow colder, not suitable for sleeping outdoors, then opens the door wider, gesturing for you to come in. Just like that, you feel your body grow, a little lighter, not just because you will have a place to sleep, but because the warmth from inside the house has just spilled out, along with the light and the low sound of people talking. Inside the longhouse, the atmosphere is completely different from outside. The heat from the large hearth, in the center of the house, spreads throughout the space, mingling with the smell of wood, smoke, meat soup cooking, coarse bread, dry sheep's wool, and a bit of the saltiness of the sea, clinging to the clothes of those who have just come in. The ceiling is high and dark, the smoke-blackened wooden beams stretching out like the arms of the night holding up the roof. Along both sides are wooden benches, low chests, rolls of animal hides, a few shields hanging high, and some work tools neatly placed against the walls. The fire in the middle does not flare too brightly. It burns steadily, red and even, enough to soften every line in the room. You stand still for a moment at the door, just to let your body adjust to that warmth and light. And the first feeling that comes to you is not gratitude, but almost sleepiness, as if this house itself was built to invite the cold to stay outside the door and bring humans into the deepest state of rest possible. The woman points to a spot on a bench near the end of the house, not too close to the fire but still warm enough, then places before you a wooden bowl containing a thick stew smelling of wild onions, lamb, and vegetables, along with a piece of still warm rye bread. You say thank you, sit down, and hold the bowl with both hands. The heat seeps into your freezing palms, so pleasantly that even that alone feels like a gift. Around you, small stories continue. Adults speak to each other in low voices, occasionally breaking into short laughter. Children in another corner begin to doze off, leaning against the older ones. An old man is slowly sharpening a small knife blade, not because he needs to use it right away, but as a habit before sleep. No one pays attention to you for too long anymore, which makes you feel much more relaxed. Acceptance sometimes comes not from a warm invitation, but from people ceasing to see you as an interruption. You eat slowly, not just because you are hungry, but because hot food on a cold night always has its own way of slowing time down. Each spoonful of thick, perfectly salty soup goes down as if pulling the tiredness from your shoulders, your legs, and your back down a little further. A boy sitting a few spots away from you is trying not to fall asleep, his head tilting to one side, then snapping back up. A younger man, perhaps his father, pulls a wool blanket further over the child's shoulders without stopping the story he is telling. At the end of the house, someone hangs another strip of dried fish near the fire. Those small things happen quietly but steadily, as if the whole house is operating according to a very old and very firm rhythm. The kind of rhythm only found in places where people rely on each other through the seasons of wind and ice. After finishing your meal, you help carry a few logs closer to the hearth, then sit back down as the woman of the house places a wooden cup before you containing a warm drink brewed from herbs. Its taste is slightly bitter, slightly sweet, fragrant with dry leaves and light honey. Outside, the wind truly begins to grow stronger. You hear it pass over the grass roof with a long, dry whistling sound, but inside the house, that sound of the wind only makes the fire and warmth even more pleasant. The man who greeted you earlier asks where you came from, and you briefly tell him about the road along the coast, about the wooden bridge that almost broke under your feet, about the deer you saw this afternoon at the forest's edge. He listens, nods, and then remarks that a few days' journey further north, it is already much colder and there might soon be snow. The story doesn't go far, there is nothing dramatic, but it makes you feel strangely reassured, as if just sitting and listening to others talk about the weather, about the roads, about this morning's catch, is enough to slow your heart rate and make your eyelids heavier. A while later, once the children have been taken to the sleeping compartments, partitioned by planks and animal hides at the end of the house, the light in the house also softens. No one tells anyone to be quiet, but everyone naturally lowers their voice. The old man stops sharpening his knife, wipes the blade on a piece of cloth, and puts it into its leather sheath. A young woman begins to knit a few more rows of wool by the firelight, her hands moving so steadily it is almost hypnotic. The man sitting near the door takes off his leather boots, places them neatly by the wall, and then stretches his legs toward the hearth. There is something about the end of day rhythm of these people that makes you feel as though you are witnessing a very ancient and very ordinary ritual, the ritual of slowing down before sleep. There is no bell to mark the hour, no clear signs, only the light getting lower, the stories getting shorter, the movements getting slower, and the entire house as if slowly sinking into an invisible body of water of rest. The woman of the house brings you a thick sheepskin and points to your sleeping spot on the bench near the wall, where you can hear the fire but won't be too hot. You set down your bag, take off your outer layer, and pull the sheepskin over your legs and back. The wood beneath you is hard but firm. The wool lining underneath is coarse but warm. You lie on your side, looking toward the hearth in the center of the house. From this position, everything in the longhouse appears through the firelight, like a breathing painting. Thin smoke rising, then dissolving into the darkness above. Faces softened by fatigue, half-finished wooden cups, a shield hanging silently on the wall. The young woman's hands continuing to knit for a while longer before she stops. Outside, the wind whistles across the bay, but inside there is only the very faint crackle of firewood, the sound of someone turning over, the rustle of wool fabric, the breathing of people gradually falling asleep. You think you will fall asleep right away, but then you realize that the night here has its own way of drawing a person into rest, not by a crushing exhaustion, but by a slow sense of security. From where you lie, you see through a narrow gap in the door a strip of deep blue night, sky with a few cold stars hanging high. They shine differently from the stars over the fields you once traveled. Across in the south, here they seem sharper, clearer, as if washed clean by the sea wind. You hear a slightly larger wave hit the pier. Then further away, the sound of a mooring rope pulling tight. This village is sleeping, but it is not entirely silent. It lives in very small, very steady background sounds, like the breath of a giant organism made of wood, stone, water, fire, and people. It is while lying still like that, between the warmth and the sound of the wind, that you begin to notice the person sitting closest to the hearth, an old man you had only briefly seen before because he spoke so little. He sits with a straight back, his long silver hair falling over his shoulders, his large and dark-colored hands resting on his knees. He doesn't look particularly frail. He just carries the air of someone who has lived long and understood more winters than others. When most of the stories have subsided, he finally begins to speak, not to tell a heroic anecdote, but just to remark quietly that the sky is clear tonight, and there will be frost tomorrow. His voice is deep and dry, but as steady as a log that has been seasoned for a long time. No one replies loudly, only a few nods. A moment later, he adds that clear nights like this are often the best nights for sleeping, because the north wind brings a clean cold, sweeping all the damp smells and heavy dreams from the roof. You don't know if that is superstition, experience, or just an old man's way of speaking, but those words have something about them that makes you feel at ease. A night of clean wind and deep sleep. You repeat it silently in your head as if it were a gentle blessing from this land. The young woman finally puts away her knitting frame. The cups are neatly stacked. The fire lowers a bit more as a large log gradually burns out. Then the youngest man stands up to adjust the fire, not to make it flare larger, but just to keep the embers and a small flame enough to last through the night. Those things are done with the skill of people who have repeated them through countless evenings, and it is that peaceful repetition that makes you believe tonight will pass without anything unusual, no scary noises, no midnight panic, only a sleep that is thick, warm, and deep like the sheep's wool covering you. You pull the sheepskin a little higher. Its scent is mild and rustic, clean in the way of wind and livestock, not unpleasant, but on the contrary very real, very fitting for the cold outside. The wooden bench is hard under your back, but after a day on the road, that very firmness becomes pleasant. It doesn't sag, it doesn't sink. It just holds you with silent certainty. You lie listening to the longhouse breathe. Someone has started to snore very softly. The old man near the hearth gives a dry cough and then falls silent. A baby in some corner whimpers as if dreaming, then goes back to sleep. The wind still glides over the grass roof. The fire still pops very gently. It all blends together into a background sound that is steady, ancient, and reassuring enough that not long after, your thoughts also begin to thin out. You remember the bay outside, the boats lying tilted on the beach, the frost tomorrow morning that will surely cling white to the ropes and grass roofs. You remember the northern starlight, the smell of pine wood when you were still on the hillside, the words of the man who greeted you briefly at the door. Then those images also gradually fade, not disappearing entirely, but as if receding a bit further, making way for the feeling of warmth in your feet, in your hands, in the nape of your neck where the wool touches your skin. You realize your breathing has slowed down at some point. Inhale, the smell of fire and dry wool. Exhale, the heaviness in your shoulders sinks into the wooden bench. Inhale, the sound of the wind far out in the bay. Exhale, the sound of the fire near and small. Inhale, the safe darkness of the roof. Exhale, the long road of the day finally leaving your feet. But then, just when sleep seems almost here, a very small sound makes you open your eyes a little more. It's not a dangerous sound, just the quiet opening of a side door. A thin current of cold air glides across the floor. Through the low firelight, you see a young girl enter, perhaps just back from a storehouse or animal pen, her arms cradling a bundle of dried herbs and a few small logs. Her dark blonde hair is neatly braided, and a thick wool shawl is wrapped around her shoulders. She closes the door very gently, places the wood by the hearth, and hangs the herb bundle near a lower beam where the warmth is enough to dry them without losing the fragrance. All her movements are silent, as if she doesn't want to wake the night. You should have just looked once and gone back to sleep. But the scene is so beautiful that you keep your eyes open a bit longer. The firelight makes the edges of her hair glow like dark honey. The cold from outside still clings to the hem of her shawl, and the scent of newly dried herbs wafts through the air, as sweet as wild grass and young pine. The girl doesn't look around much, perhaps too accustomed to returning while everyone is gradually falling asleep. Before going into the compartment at the end of the house, she pauses by the old man near the hearth, leaning down to say something very softly. He nods without looking up. She smiles gently and moves on. That moment passes quickly, simply, with nothing special in the way of grand stories, but it leaves you with a very soft feeling. There are villages, roofs, and dark nights made not of great events, but of tiny things like a bundle of herbs brought in before sleep, a nod between two kin, a door closed very gently so as not to wake anyone. It is these small things, when gathered together, that create the sense of peace in which you are lying. This time, when you close your eyes, sleep truly comes closer. You no longer notice every sound clearly. Everything has blended into a steady and distant flow. In the darkness behind your eyelids, you still seem to see the red hearth, the high roof, the black wooden beams, the smell of smoke, the smell of wool, the smell of the far-off sea. You don't think about tomorrow. You don't think about where you will go next. You don't think about whether you should stay longer or leave early. Those things can be left for the morning to solve. As for tonight, in a Viking village by the fjord, the only thing that matters is being able to lie down, to be warmed, to hear the wind outside without having to struggle against it, to let your body drift slowly into rest like a log dropped onto still water. And when sleep finally reaches you, it doesn't come as a fall, but as a very wide and very firm, invisible arm gently catching you, pulling you from the last bit of wakefulness, going deeper into the warm darkness of the longhouse where the fire is still red, the wind is still singing outside the grass roof, and the entire northern village is sinking gradually into a quiet night, long, deep, more ancient than any worry you ever carried with you. When you have surrendered completely to sleep, the night in that Viking village continues to drift in its own way, slowly, steadily, existing fully without the need for observation. In the space between slumber and vague dreams, you still seem to sense the presence of the world around you, as if your body has rested but a very light part of your mind remains listening, staying behind with the sound of the wind, the fire, and the gentle warmth of the longhouse. The wind outside has grown steadier now. The sudden sharp gusts have ceased, replaced by a constant flow over the grass roof and wooden walls. It creates a long, deep, continuous sound, like a wordless ambient melody of this land. You realize that it is this sound, rather than absolute silence, that pulls your sleep deeper, for it does not startle or demand your attention. It simply keeps the space feeling full and whole. Inside the longhouse, the fire has burned down even further. There are no more high flames, only glowing mounds of embers breathing a dull red, occasionally sparking a tiny light when a piece of wood hairline fractures. This light is not enough to make things clear, but it is enough to hold on to the feeling that you are not in total darkness, but rather surrounded by a light that is very soft and very deep, as if the night is not an absence of light, but another form of it entirely. You shift slightly, not fully awake, just a natural movement of the body seeking a more comfortable position. The sheepskin above moves with you, trapping the warmth you have gathered since the start of the night. In that moment, you think of nothing and remember nothing. You only feel the comfort spreading from your back, your shoulders, and your neck, a sensation sufficient to let you drift back down deeper into sleep. Somewhere in the house, someone coughs softly and then falls silent again, a small sign that life continues even in rest. You are not bothered by the sound. On the contrary, it makes the space feel more real, more intimate, as if you are not sleeping alone but are among other humans and other breaths, all blending into one very slow collective rhythm. Time passes without clear markers, no change in light, no waking sound, only a very slight shift in sensation as the cold outside seems to deepen a fraction, making the warmth inside feel even more distinct. In your half-dreaming state, you sense this contrast without thought, as if your body understands better than your mind that this is a safe place, a place enclosed and firm enough to keep you from the cold spreading out there. In a hazy dream, You find yourself standing again by the shore of the fjord. But it is not the afternoon as before. It is the middle of the night, when the water is blacker and deeper, and the sky above is so crowded with stars that there is almost no empty space left. You are not afraid or cold. You simply stand there and look, sensing a vastness that is very still, unthreatening, and without pressure, simply existing. You see the boats lying still on the beach, their shadows long and blurred in the starlight. You hear the water moving very gently, not the sound of large waves, but small rhythmic movements, as if the sea too is sleeping in its own way, not entirely silent, but slow enough not to disturb a single thing. Then that image fades, not ending abruptly but thinning out like mist, and you return to the sensation of your body lying in the longhouse, with the warmth, the scent of wood, and a very deep stability that you do not need to hold on to, because it is already there, unchanging. The night continues to flow, and gradually, the air begins to change ever so slightly. It is not the light, but a feeling almost impossible to name, as the cold reaches its deepest point before beginning to recede. If you were fully awake, you might not notice it, but in sleep, your body still senses it, still adjusting your breath and your heart rate to match that minute change. Perhaps out there frost has begun to form on the grass, on the roofs, and on the ropes tied to the boats. If you were to open your eyes and step outside, you would see everything covered in a thin, white layer shimmering under the stars. But you do not do that. You do not need to. For sleep at this moment is more important, more profound, and you are exactly where you need to be. In the house, a few people begin to move slightly, not because they are waking, but because their bodies are shifting into another stage of sleep. Those movements are tiny and slow, not enough to interrupt anyone, and you only perceive them like gentle ripples passing over a flat surface of water. Your breathing by now is so steady it is almost merged with the space, no longer clearly separate. You are no longer aware of whether you are breathing or not, for your body does everything on its own, no longer needing your attention. This is the deepest state where you need no control, no thought, only to exist within the rest. And then, very slowly, very far away, another sensation begins to appear. It is not quite waking, but a lightening of your sleep, as if you are surfacing from a very deep place, not being pulled sharply or startled awake, but simply becoming lighter, closer to the surface of consciousness. But you haven't opened your eyes yet. You don't want to leave this state just yet, for it is too pleasant, too complete. You just lie there a bit longer, thinking of nothing, doing nothing, only sensing that you have slept very deeply and very long, and that your body has rested properly, without interruption or the pull of tension. Somewhere near the hearth, a small log collapses, creating a faint noise, and the red embers flare up slightly, a sign that the night is slowly coming to an end. Even with your eyes closed, you sense that a new day is very near, though it does not need to arrive just yet. You lie there on the threshold between sleep and wakefulness, holding on to the quiet for just a moment more, as if wishing to stretch this instant longer. In that stillness, you are no longer a traveler, no longer an outsider. You are just a part of the village, of the night, and of the sleep. A very small part, yet completely harmonious, not separate, not out of place. And before the first light of morning touches the grass roof outside, you drift down once more. Not as deep as before, but enough to keep you in rest for one more moment, one more rhythm, one more pocket of peace, before the world begins to turn very gently, very slowly. Just like the way everything in this place always happens. And then very slowly, as if no one truly wants to break the stillness that has enfolded the long night, the morning begins to arrive, not with harsh light or sudden sound, but through a subtle shift in the air. The deepest cold of the night gradually softens, and the lingering warmth from the hearth becomes a little more perceptible, as if preparing to make way for another source of light. Your eyes remain closed, yet your body senses the change before your mind can name it. Your breathing grows lighter, no longer as heavy as it was during the profound depths of sleep. but beginning to find a rhythm closer to wakefulness. Yet, it is not hurried or abrupt. It is a transition as soft and natural as a turning tide. Somewhere within the longhouse there is the sound of someone turning over, followed by the faint rustle of wool. Another person quietly sits up, saying nothing, only reaching out to pull a blanket closer. These small sounds, rather than startling you awake, bring a sense of reassurance, as if you are waking along with everyone else, not alone, not in a strange void, but within the shared pulse of a place that has sheltered you through the night. You slowly open your eyes, not because you were awakened, but because you are ready to see. The light you find is not the brilliant glare of day, but a very pale blue-gray wash of light filtering through the cracks of the door and the openings in the roof, enough to define the shapes of things without stripping away the gentleness of the early morning. The hearth in the center of the house still glows, though it has weakened. A man is leaning over, gently adding a few small logs, not to make the fire roar immediately, but to let it rekindle slowly, ensuring the warmth continues to spread. You watch this for a few seconds, sensing the deliberation in every movement, as if in this place, even tending the fire requires no haste. You sit up slightly, the sheepskin sliding gently down your shoulders. The cooler morning air touches your skin, not cold enough to be unpleasant, but just enough to bring clarity. You take a deep breath, tasting the scent of wood, the light smoke, and a hint of the early dew drifting in from outside. No one in the house speaks loudly. There are no noisy calls, only small movements and light footsteps. You realize that morning here is much like the evening. Not a boisterous beginning, but a very soft continuation of the silence. A woman brings out a pot of hot water and places it near the hearth. The steam rises in thin ribbons, dissolving quickly into the air. You watch that vapor for a moment, as if it carries away the remnants of your fading sleep, leaving behind a wakefulness that is alert, yet remains soft. You run your hand gently over your face, feeling no need to rush up, no need to immediately begin a new day. You simply sit there a bit longer, sensing your body after its deep rest, realizing that every muscle has loosened, the heaviness has left your mind, and a light sensation spreads through you. Not loud, but enough for you to know that you have truly rested. Outside, the light gradually sharpens, though it is not yet strong. Through the gap in the door, you see the ground covered in a thin layer of frost, shimmering faintly under the early light. The air out there is surely colder than inside, yet it feels crisper, cleaner, as if everything has been renewed after the long night. A few people in the house begin their preparations to head out. They put on extra layers, retie their bootlaces, and check small belongings. But it all happens in silence, or with only a few brief words exchanged. You sense that they are not hurried or pressured. They simply do what needs to be done according to their own rhythm. You stand up, adjust your cloak, and take a few steps toward the door. You don't open it immediately, but stand there for a moment, feeling the difference between inside and out, between the warmth and the cool, between night and day. In that moment, you realize you don't need to carry everything that happened last night with you. You only need to hold on to the feeling of it, the stillness, the slowness, the sense of being whole without needing much. When you finally open the door, the morning light touches you, not blinding or intense, but gentle. The cold air sweeps past, carrying the scent of water, of earth, and of damp wood. You step outside, looking at the village in the new light. They are the same roofs, the same paths, but now they are a little brighter, a little clearer, as if everything has just been awakened. But you are in no hurry to leave. No rush to walk fast. You just stand there, taking a deep breath and exhaling very slowly, holding the rhythm of the night within every movement of the morning. You know that even as you continue your journey, even as you leave this village behind, the feeling of that night, of that sleep, and of that peace will remain, not as a distinct memory, but as a very light part of you, walking with you in your next steps. And in that moment, amidst the quiet morning of a Viking village, you don't need to think further ahead or do anything more. You only need to stand there a little longer, feeling that everything is exactly where it belongs, slow, steady, and enough for you to begin a new day in the gentlest possible way. You stand there a moment longer, not because there is anything left to ponder, but simply because this morning does not demand that you hurry away. As you breathe in once more, the cold northern air reaches deeper, clearer, awakening every sense while retaining the lingering gentleness of the night within your body. The light spreads further over the village, no longer just a hazy blue-gray, but beginning to show a very pale gold on the horizon. It reflects off the water of the fjord in a thin layer of brilliance, and you can now see the boats lying on the shore more clearly. Every line of the wood, every mooring rope, every bead of water still clinging to the hulls. It all emerges so slowly, as if the morning is tenderly redrawing the world after the night had erased everything with its shadows. You take a few steps down the dirt path, feeling the thin frost beneath your feet. The dampness seeps through your boots, not unpleasantly but with a refreshing coolness, and each step is no longer as heavy as yesterday. It no longer carries fatigue, but feels lighter and more rhythmic, as if sleep has fulfilled its duty perfectly. A little further off, you see a man standing near the pier rechecking the boat lines. He does not look at you. There is no need for greetings. He simply continues his work with a very quiet focus, and you realize that in this place, a person's presence does not need to be confirmed with words. It is enough just to be there, in the same space, within the same pulse of life. A light breeze brushes past, carrying the scent of the sea and damp wood. You pull your cloak a bit tighter, not out of cold, but as a natural reflex. In that moment, you realize your body is functioning very simply and naturally, ungoverned by thought, unpulled by plans, merely reacting to what is happening around it. You walk along the shore of the fjord with no clear destination, just to feel this space a little longer. The water is almost flat now, with only tiny ripples spreading from slight movements. When you look down, you see the sky reflected in the water, hazy and trembling slightly, yet enough to create the sensation that you are standing between two skies, one above, one below, both vast and both still. In the distance, the sun begins to crest. It does not rise quickly or forcefully. It appears gradually, and its light does not break the morning's quiet. Instead, it only makes everything clearer, a little warmer. You stop, not to watch, but simply to let that light touch you. Very gently, very slowly. You recall last night, not every detail but the feeling, the warmth, the quiet, the sound of the fire, the wind. You realize those things are still here. They did not vanish when the night passed. They only shifted into another form, lighter, harder to notice, yet still existing in the way you breathe, the way you stand, and the way you look at everything around you. You turn back toward the village and see the kitchen smoke beginning to rise more steadily. Doors open. A few people step outside to begin the work of a new day, but no one is hurried. No one is rushing. You realize that here, time is not chopped into segments to be completed, but flows like a continuous, uninterrupted stream. You know that you will leave not immediately, but sometime today. You will continue your journey passing through other roads and other lands, yet you feel no rush to depart. You do not need to hold on to this place or struggle to remember every image. You only need to carry the feeling it has left behind. You walk slowly back to the path leading up the hillside, the same one you descended the evening before. Each step is light, carrying no heaviness at all. When you reach a higher vantage point, you turn to look at the village one last time, not to memorize it, but simply to look, as a silent way of saying goodbye. The village now shrinks in your sight. The roofs, the pier, the paths, all merging into a part of the landscape. It is not prominent or separate, but just a piece of the wider world. You stand there a moment longer, letting the image settle within you, with no need to grasp it or give it a name. Then you turn away, continuing your path. As your footsteps leave that place, you carry no noise and no haste. You carry only a slower rhythm, a deeper breath, and a stillness that you can keep, no matter where you go. Throughout the journey ahead, no matter what you see, who you meet, or where you travel, a very small part of that night, of that village, and of that sleep will stay with you. It will not be a vivid memory, but a background feeling, a light piece, always there, ready to return whenever you stop, breathe, and remember that you once had a night so deep and so quiet in a Viking village by the cold fjord, where everything happened slowly, and it was enough for you to rest completely. As you continue to walk along the path leading up the hillside, the morning light grows clearer behind your back. But within your mind, there remains a very deep silence, as if last night's sleep has not entirely departed, but lingers, very light and very distant. It is within this silence that a familiar sensation begins to return. You are not sleeping, yet not fully awake, but in a very thin state between two worlds, where dreams can slip in quite naturally. You keep walking, but everything around you seems slightly slower. Sounds grow faint, and the light becomes softer, as if a thin layer of mist has draped itself over everything. Then, very gently, you realize you are no longer walking on the old path, but are standing once again by the shore of the fjord. Not in the morning, but on another evening. One very much like the night before, yet somehow different. The sky in this dream is not entirely dark, but carries a deep blue hue, almost standing still. The stars are not just far above. They seem closer, clearer, as if you can perceive them not just with your eyes, but with your intuition. The water before you does not simply reflect them. It seems to hold on to that light, causing both the sky and the water to merge into a space without clear boundaries. You do not feel out of place, nor do you ask questions, for in a dream, everything seems natural in its own way. You step down toward the water's edge, but your footsteps create no sound and leave no trace, as if you no longer carry your former weight. In the distance you see the boats, but they are not resting as they do by day. They are drifting very slowly, without need for oars or mooring lines, moving gently across the flat water. The light from the sky reflects upon them, making them look like blurred silhouettes, vague, yet undeniably present. You watch them, not trying to understand or draw near, just standing there. In that moment, you sense a quietness different from the quietness of sleep, a deeper, vaster silence, as if not only you, but this entire space is also at rest. Then from behind, you hear a very light footstep. It does not startle you, it only makes you turn. You see the girl who brought the bundle of herbs into the house the night before. She stands there, not far, not near, the light from the sky softening her face, not in sharp detail, but enough for you to recognize her. She says nothing at first, only looking at you for a moment as if making sure you are truly there. Then she steps closer, each movement slow and silent. When she stands beside you, she only whispers that this is the place where the deepest sleeps touch one another, where one no longer carries heavy things, but only what is lightest within themselves. You do not ask more, and no explanation is needed, for those words are not meant for the intellect to grasp, but for the soul to feel. As you look back at the water, you see very faint images appear and disappear, not clear, not specific, but giving the sense of the dreams of many others drifting by, touching lightly, and then fading away. The girl stands beside you, saying nothing more, and you have no need to speak, for her presence does not disturb the silence. It only makes it feel a bit more complete, as if this dream is not yours alone, but part of a wider space where many sleeps coexist without overlapping. You feel yourself becoming lighter, no longer thinking clearly, no longer intending to do anything, just standing, watching, breathing, and letting everything pass by. In that moment, you can no longer distinguish between dream, memory, or sensation, for they have all merged into a very smooth, flowing stream. Then very slowly, like mist dissipating as the light arrives, the image begins to fade. The girl does not vanish instantly, but only recedes a bit further. The light around her pales, and the water returns to its original flat stillness, free of those fleeting images. You do not try to hold on, nor do you try to call it back, for you know that a dream is not a thing to be grasped, but something to be experienced. When it leaves, it does not leave a void. It leaves only a sensation, very light, very deep, like a faint trace left in the mind. And when you realize you are standing once again on the hillside path, the morning light has grown clearer, a light breeze blows past, and as you continue your walk, you know that the dream has ended. Yet it has not entirely disappeared. It remains somewhere within you as a part of the sleep, a part of the night, a part of the stillness you have carried with you. You do not need to turn back or go looking for it, for you understand that dreams like these always have a way of returning, not when you try to call them, but when you are quiet enough to listen, slow enough to notice, and light enough not to let them vanish too quickly. When you truly wake up, no longer lingering on the threshold between dream and reality, but fully returning to the morning unfolding before your eyes, you realize that this awakening is not at all hurried. There is no sensation of being jerked awake or forced to begin. Rather, it feels as if you are gradually surfacing from a still body of water, very slowly, very light. When you open your eyes, everything around you appears clearly, yet retains the soft edges of the sleep that has just passed. The morning light has now flooded further into the longhouse. It is no longer a pale blue-gray, but has taken on a very soft golden hue, reflecting off the wooden walls, the floor, and familiar objects. You sit up slowly, without haste, allowing your body to adjust and letting every sensation return naturally, from your hands and feet to your breath. Everything becomes clearer, yet remains weightless. The air inside is still warm, but the freshness of the morning has begun to weave its way in. You take a deep breath, sensing the scent of wood, the light smoke, and something very crisp and clean, as if the night has carried away the old, leaving behind a space that is entirely renewed. Around you, people have begun their day, but there is no clamor, no rush, only slow movements. One person is retying a bootlace, another is folding a blanket, someone else is pouring water into a pot. All these actions take place in a very steady, very familiar rhythm, as if they do not need to think about what they are doing. They simply do it in the way they have known for a long time. You stand up, adjust your cloak, and step outside. The door opens without a loud sound, just a gentle movement. The moment you step out, the morning air touches you, cool, clear, and full of life, yet it does not startle you. It only brings you to a pleasant state of alertness. The village has now fully awakened, yet it preserves the peace of the early morning. Kitchen smoke rises from many rooftops, forming thin ribbons in the air, and the sunlight shining through them makes everything appear softer and more subdued. You look around and see people beginning their work, but no one is hurried, no one runs. Everything moves at a slow pace that perfectly suits this space. You walk along the dirt path, feeling each footstep and each breath. You realize you don't need to think about what today will be like. You don't need to plan or predict. You only need to walk and let the day unfold itself. You pass a man splitting wood. Each stroke of his axe is firm and rhythmic, not fast, not slow. The sound echoes through the space, not loud, but distinct. You pause for a moment to watch him work, not out of curiosity, but because his rhythm reassures you, as if everything is happening exactly as it should, with nothing that needs to change. Further on, a few children are playing near the shore of the fjord. They are not noisy and do not run too fast. They simply skip small stones into the water, watching the ripples spread and then vanish. You realize that their joy is also very simple. It doesn't require much. It isn't complex. It is just enough to make the morning feel a little more vivid. You continue walking, passing by houses, fences, and woodpiles. Everything you see feels familiar in some way, even though you have just arrived, as if this place is not a stranger to you, but a part of the world you have just begun to understand more deeply. You find a spot near the water's edge, sit down, and look out over the fjord. The light is clear now, reflecting on the surface in gentle bands of brilliance. You think of nothing. There is no need to think. You just watch, letting everything around you exist without your interference. Time passes, but you do not perceive it as a fast current. Instead, it feels like an open space where you can remain as long as you wish, unpressured, unpulled. In that moment, you realize that life does not always need to move forward faster. Sometimes it only needs to slow down to be felt. You stand up after a while, not because you must go, but because your body wishes to move. You walk on, carrying no thoughts, carrying no worries, only the lightness of this morning. Throughout that day, whatever you do or wherever you go, you maintain that rhythm, unhurried, untensed. You simply live in each moment in the way this village has lived, in the way last night taught you. You know that even if you leave, even if you return to a louder world, you can still carry this feeling with you. A sensation very light, very deep, always there, waiting for you to return whenever you need it. You continue your walk through that morning with no specific destination, carrying no clear plan. And that is precisely what makes every moment feel fuller, clearer. It is as if when you stop trying to control your day, the day opens itself up in the gentlest and most complete way. As you pass by long houses still holding the lingering warmth of the night, you hear very small everyday sounds. The soft clink of bowls, the sound of water being poured, a wooden door creaking open and then pulling shut. All of it blends into a very mellow background rhythm that does not disturb, but only gives the space a sense of depth. You realize that here everyone begins their day in their own way, yet no one is more hurried than the next. There is no sense of being pressured to be faster or to do more. There is only the natural succession of things that need to be done, as if life is not a series of tasks, but a flow, and each person is simply a part of that current. You pause near a smaller house where a woman is hanging wool fabrics on a line stretched between two wooden posts. As a light breeze brushes past, the fabrics sway gently, creating a movement that is very soft and very slow. You stand and watch for a moment, not because there is anything extraordinary, but because that simplicity brings a very pleasant feeling, as if things do not need to be complex to be beautiful. Further on, you see a group of people preparing to repair a boat. They do not speak loudly or work in haste. They only exchange a few short words before continuing their task. Each movement is steady and rhythmic, and you realize that here, work is not a thing to be finished quickly, but a part of life itself performed with attention and calm. You walk on, your footsteps making no loud noise. As you pass over patches of frost-covered earth that have begun to dry, you see the footprints of those who went before you. Light traces on the soil, neither distinct nor permanent. You realize that everyone who passes through this place leaves some kind of mark, yet no one tries to hold on. No one tries to make their mark last longer. All accept that everything will fade, that everything will change. You climb to a higher vantage point where you can look down over the entire village, and you stop, not out of tiredness, but because you want to see, you want to hold this moment a little longer. From here, you see the roofs, the paths, the tiny figures of people within the vast space, all merging together, nothing standing out too much, yet creating a very balanced whole. The wind blows through, light, carrying the scent of wood, of the sea, and of the earth. You breathe it in, feeling all those things without needing to name them, without needing to analyze them, just letting it pass through you. In that moment, you realize you are no longer an outsider observing. You have become a part of this space, even if only for a short while. Time passes, and the light grows stronger, yet it does not break the quiet. It only makes everything clearer. You turn and continue back down, not because there is a place you must reach, but because your body wants to move, wants to continue the journey, but without carrying any haste. You pass by the shore of the fjord once more. The water is brighter now, reflecting the pale blue sky. You see birds flying low over the surface, their wings creating very light movements before disappearing into the open air. You watch them, without thought, just letting the image drift by. A man you saw earlier looks at you and gives a slight nod, and you nod back. No words are needed, for among the people here, small gestures are enough to understand. You continue walking, sensing that you do not need to explain your presence. You do not need to prove anything. You only need to be there, in this moment. You return to the longhouse once again, not to stay, but to gather your belongings. When you step inside, the air is still warm, still carrying the familiar scent of last night. You feel a slight sense of closeness, as if you are no longer a stranger, even though you only stayed for one night. You pack your things without hurry, and as you step outside again, you know you are leaving, but you feel no sense of loss, no regret, only a very natural continuation, much like how everything here continues whether you stay or not. You step onto the path leading out of the village. The morning light is clear now, and ahead lie other lands, other journeys. But this time, you do not walk with a sense of searching, but with a sense of serenity, as if you have already carried with you enough of what is necessary. As you move further away, the small village behind you grows faint, not because it is disappearing, but because you no longer need to keep it in your sight. It has become a part of you, a part very light and very deep. Throughout the long day ahead, though you may pass through other places, you will keep that rhythm, slow, steady, and enough so that you are not swept too far away from yourself. And perhaps, when night comes once again in another place, under another sky, you will remember this feeling, not as a distinct memory, but as a breath, a pocket of silence. And you will again know how to close your eyes, relax and let sleep come gently, in the way it came in that peaceful Viking village. You continue to move away from that village, yet your footsteps carry no sense of abandonment. Instead, it feels as though you are simply shifting gently from one rhythm of life to another. As the path gradually opens up before you, the morning light grows sharper, but it does not break the stillness that has followed you from last night until now. As if a piece of the village remains within the way you walk, in your slow and steady breath. The path leads you through a more open landscape, where low grassy slopes stretch out, and in the distance, clusters of small trees stand silent in the wind. They are not as dense as a forest, but enough to cast light shadows upon the ground. As you walk through, you sense a very subtle change in the air. The wind passing through the grass carries a different scent. The smell of earth warming under the light, of dew slowly vanishing, and of a new day unfolding. You do not check a watch, nor do you count the hours, yet you know the morning is passing. It moves neither fast nor slow, only at its own true pace. In that moment you realize that not knowing the exact time makes you feel lighter, as if you are no longer bound to segments that must be completed, but simply to the act of continuing. You pass by a small stream. The water flows very clear, neither forceful nor loud. You stop, lean down, and touch the water, feeling a very slight chill spread across your skin. It does not discomfort you. It only brings a pleasant alertness. You leave your hand there a moment longer, as if wishing to hold on to that sensation. When you stand up, you do not dry your hands immediately, letting the water evaporate in the wind. You realize that such small actions, When slowed down, bring a clearer, fuller feeling as if you are truly in the moment, rather than just passing through it. You continue walking and the path begins to lead you into an area with more trees. Not a thick forest, but rows of sparse trees where light filters through the canopy, creating a tapestry of light and shadow on the ground. You walk through these patches of light, unhurried with no need to avoid them, letting light and shadow take turns touching you. Somewhere ahead you hear the sound of birds, not many, not loud, just a few short, clear notes. You do not search for them or look up. You simply let the sound exist as a part of the space, without needing to set it apart. You begin to feel your body grow a little warmer as the sun climbs higher. But it is not hot. It is just enough to make your stride feel more effortless. You realize you are not tired and have no need for rest. You only want to continue. Not because there is a place you must reach, but because the walking itself is enough. Occasionally you think of the village behind you, not as a place you just left, but as a part of the journey that has settled deep within. The images are no longer sharp, leaving only the feeling. You do not try to hold on to it or force yourself to remember, for you know that what needs to stay will stay. You pass over a higher stretch of land, and from there, you can see the fjord in the distance, smaller now, more blurred. The village is now only a collection of tiny dots nearly merging into the landscape. You stand there for a moment, not to stare, but simply to confirm that you have traveled far, and that everything is still fine, still quiet with no need to turn back just yet. You turn away and continue walking. As you do, a very light sensation appears. It is not sadness, nor is it joy, but a sense of being empty just enough. It is not unpleasant, it is soothing, as if you are carrying space within yourself, not filled with thoughts or strong emotions, but just enough for you to feel. You realize that life, at least in this moment, does not need to be complicated. It does not need many things to happen. It only needs enough small movements, light sounds, and slow changes. It is these things that make everything feel more complete. As the sun climbs even higher, the light becomes vivid but not harsh. You feel that the day has truly begun, not because of any grand change, but because you have traveled long, enough to sense the transition from night to day in its entirety. You continue your journey, no faster, no slower, still keeping the rhythm that has followed you since last night. Throughout that distance, you do not need to think much or decide much. You only need to step, to breathe, and to let everything happen. In that continuation, you understand that the journey is not about where you arrive, but about how you go. And if you can keep this slowness, this silence, then any place you reach can become a place of rest, a place to breathe, a place where you are not swept too far away from yourself. The day is still long ahead, but you do not need to see all of it right now. You only need to take one more step and then another, letting each step carry the lightness you have learned, the way the night taught you, the way the village showed you that everything can slow down if only you allow it. As you continue your journey through that open land, the morning light gradually shifts into noon and then quietly drifts toward evening. You realize that not every day is the same. There are quiet days that pass like a still stream, but there are also days that carry a different rhythm, a subtle movement you can sense before you even see it. On that afternoon, as you pass over a range of low hills, you begin to hear strange sounds. Not loud, not boisterous, but rhythmic and repetitive, like a very distant drum blending with the murmur of voices and light laughter. You know that up ahead, something is unfolding. You slow your pace not out of tiredness, but because you want to keep your own rhythm, refusing to let those sounds pull you too fast. As you draw closer, you see another village. It is no larger than the previous one, yet today it feels entirely different. The steady, everyday silence of the morning is gone, replaced by a gentle stir spreading everywhere, as if the entire village is preparing together for something long awaited. Strips of colored cloth are hung between wooden posts, not overly vibrant, but enough to make the space feel warmer. Wooden tables are pulled out and set upon the flat earth, laden with bowls, trays, and dishes in preparation. The scent of food drifts through the air, not pungent but light, yet enough for you to recognize that this is no ordinary meal, but a part of a special occasion. the villagers move about more frequently, yet without haste or chaos. Each person has their task. One is retying a hanging cord, another is adding wood to the great bonfire in the center of the yard. A few children run about, yet they aren't noisy. They laugh softly as if they too understand that today is different. Yet there is no need to break the peace. You stand at the edge, not stepping in immediately, just observing. You realize that a festival here is not an explosion of noise. It isn't about loud music or frantic excitement. It is an expansion of daily life, a place where everything still moves slowly, but with an added layer of warmth and connection between people. As you approach, a man catches your eye and gives a slight nod of greeting. He doesn't ask where you came from or demand an explanation. He simply gestures that you may come closer. You step in, feeling no sense of displacement or being an outsider, but rather like a very small part of the gathering crowd. In the center of the yard, a great fire has been lit, but it doesn't roar. It burns steadily, casting a golden glow over the surrounding faces, softening everything. You stand there feeling the warmth spread, not just from the flames, but from the presence of many people sharing the same time and space. A woman brings out a tray of food and sets it on the table. You see simple dishes, roasted meat, bread, dried fish, and vegetables, all familiar. But when placed together in this setting, they become different. It is as if they are no longer just food, but a part of a shared experience. You are handed a piece of bread and a cup of water, and you accept them without the need for many words. As you eat, you do not rush. You do not eat out of hunger, but as a part of the moment, savoring the taste, the warmth, and the surrounding atmosphere. The drumming you heard from afar is clearer now, not fast or pounding, but slow and steady, like the heartbeat of the village. A few people begin to move to that rhythm, not in complex dances, but with light steps and simple movements. It is as if they aren't trying to perform, but are simply merging themselves into the cadence. You stand there not joining in right away, just watching. You realize that this festival asks nothing of you. It doesn't force you to participate, but merely opens a space where you can just be in your own way. That realization makes you feel more at ease. Gradually, as the afternoon light turns to twilight, the colors of the sky shift, and the firelight grows more vivid. The space around you becomes warmer, and the chatter grows quieter, not because people have less to say, but because they have no need to speak loudly. An elder begins to tell a story. His voice isn't high or sharp, but its rhythm is slow and steady. You don't need to understand every word. You only need to listen and let the sound pass through you, like a part of the approaching night. The children gradually sit down near the adults, no longer running, just listening or leaning against a shoulder. You realize that the festival is not a climax, but a transition, from day to night, from activity to rest, from the outside to the within. When total darkness falls, the firelight becomes the primary source of light. Everything around you becomes soft shadows, vague, yet enough for you to sense. You sit down, no longer standing, no longer observing from afar, but in the midst of it, as a part of the circle. You don't think much or analyze, you just let everything happen. In that moment, you realize this festival is not meant to excite you, but to slow you down, to let you feel a connection that is not noisy or forceful, but very light and very deep. As the night deepens, the drumming thins out and the story comes to an end. There is no grand finale, only the return of silence. One by one, people stand up, without hurry, without many words, returning to their own spaces, carrying with them the warmth of the evening. You stand up as well, feeling neither tired nor lacking. You simply feel enough. As you leave the yard, the firelight remains behind you, but you don't need to look back. You know that what needed to stay has already stayed within you. like a gentle rhythm, a pocket of silence, a part of a day that has passed in a way that was very slow, very quiet, and very complete. As you leave the courtyard where the festival has just settled, your footsteps do not carry the recent excitement. Instead, you hold only a very light warmth lingering in the air. You walk slowly along the dirt path leading toward the water's edge, where the firelight behind you gradually shrinks into distant sparks. Not enough to illuminate the way, but enough for you to know that people are still there, warmth still remains, and stories have not yet fully closed. The night is deeper now, but not bitingly cold, only crisp and clear. The sky opens wide above, stars spreading out more numerously and vividly. As you approach the shore of the fjord, you hear the very light, rhythmic pulse of the water, like a familiar breath you've heard in another place, on another night. That sound makes you pause, not because of anything unusual, but because you feel no immediate need to move on. You stand there for a while, looking out over the water. The moonlight reflects in a thin, vague silver band, enough to create a sense of profound stillness. In that moment, you do not think of the journey or of tomorrow. You are simply there, within the silence. Then you hear a footstep behind you, very light. It doesn't startle you, you simply turn by natural reflex. When you do, you see her. She is not a hazy image as in your previous dream, but a presence very real and distinct, standing a respectful distance away under the light of the night. She does not approach immediately, nor does she rush to speak. She just stands there, as if she too has just stepped out of the festival, carrying the leftover quiet. In the dim light, you recognize her face. No need to look closely, no need for confirmation. For there are people who, when you see them, require no thought to know exactly who they are. You don't step toward her right away, and you don't call her name, you just stand still. In that pocket of silence, there is no awkwardness, no strangeness, only a sense of familiarity, as if the two of you have stood in places like this before, even if you never truly have. She moves a little closer, each step slow and soundless. When she stands beside you, neither of you looks at the other immediately. Instead, you both look out at the water, as if that were the most natural thing to do in this moment. Time passes without words, yet without discomfort. You realize that sometimes saying nothing carries more meaning. There is nothing to explain, nothing to prove. It is enough just to be there, in the same space, sharing the same breath. She speaks softly, her voice very low, saying that tonight is quieter than others. You nod without adding more, for you feel it too. Her words are not meant to spark a long conversation, but are simply a gentle way to share a common perception. You glance at her briefly, just long enough to see the starlight reflected in her eyes. It isn't sharp, but it's enough to recognize a deep peace within her. Not an intense joy, but a profound stillness that mirrors the world around you. She doesn't ask where you came from or where you are going, and you don't ask her either. In this moment, those questions do not matter. What matters is the presence, the fact that both of you are here, in the same night, within the same silence. A light breeze passes, stirring her hair. You realize something very simple. There are people who, when near, do not make you feel like you must become someone else. They don't make you feel like you must speak more or think more. They only make you lighter, slower, and truer to yourself. The two of you stand there a while longer, with no need to count the minutes. When you finally say, very simply, that you will be leaving tomorrow, she shows no surprise or sadness. She only nods slightly, as if it were already understood. She says that paths always lead away, and those who walk them will always continue. You hear those words not as a goodbye, but as a plain truth, a part of life that requires no change. You say nothing more. You make no promises and try to hold nothing back. You know that moments like these do not need to be prolonged with words. They only need to be kept as they are, complete in their brevity. Then, she turns first, walking slowly back toward the village without looking back. You watch her for a moment. You don't call out or follow, letting her image gradually merge into the darkness, becoming a part of the night. You turn back to the water. The moon is still there. The wind remains light. You stand a while longer, thinking of very little, only sensing that there are encounters that do not need to last or be defined. Yet they remain with you for a long time, very gently. And when you finally turn away to follow your own path, you carry no regret and no emptiness. You carry only a very tender sensation, like a small breath of warmth in the cold night, enough to walk with you through your next steps, not making you heavier, only making you more at peace. After that brief encounter by the water's edge, as you depart into the silent night, something within you has shifted ever so slightly. It is not a powerful emotion or a vivid memory, but rather like a small door that has just swung open. From there, your journey is no longer just a series of aimless footsteps. It becomes a sequence of very different adventures, not noisy, not dramatic, but deeper and fuller in its own unique way. You continue through diverse lands, each bearing its own rhythm. Yet, you no longer seek the grand or wait for extraordinary events. You simply let whatever happens come to you naturally. Because of this, every day becomes an adventure, not because it is unusual, but because you are seeing it through a different lens. There are days when you walk along long coastal paths where the waves pulse steadily against the rocks, neither forceful nor weak, just enough to create a constant ambient rhythm. You walk for hours without feeling weary, for you do not walk to arrive. You walk to feel each step, each gust of wind, each tiny sound of water meeting stone. There are days when you enter the woods, where the light is caught between high canopies, creating alternating patches of dark and bright. You move more slowly, not because the path is difficult, but because you want to hold on to that stillness longer. In the forest, you hear the smallest sounds, a falling leaf, a snapping twig, a bird passing overhead, all of which become clearer when you are not in a hurry. Once you meet a hunter. He does not say much, only nodding when he sees you. The two of you walk a short distance together in silence. That silence is not heavy. It is natural, as if humans do not always require words to understand one another. There are afternoons when you stop by a river, not large, not deep. You sit there watching the water flow, thinking neither of the past nor the future. You just look, letting time pass without measurement. Such moments become a vital part of the journey, even if nothing happens. Another time you pass through a land shrouded in mist where everything becomes blurred and indistinct. You cannot see far. You see only what is closest. Each footstep, each tuft of grass, each stone. You realize that sometimes not being able to see far into the distance makes you focus more on the present. That, too, is a form of adventure, not of space, but of perception. There are nights when you sleep under the open sky with no roof but your cloak and a small fire. You look up at the stars, remembering the night in the Viking village, remembering the deep sleep. You realize that no matter where you are, you can carry that silence with you, not from a place, but from within. You meet other people, not many, not often, but each leaves a mark, a sentence, a look, a brief moment. You do not try to hold them back or force a lasting connection. You simply let each meeting unfold as it must, and then let it pass. There are times when you walk in light rain. You don't seek shelter immediately, but let the drops touch your cloak and your hands. You sense the change in the atmosphere when it rains. The sounds shift. The scent of the earth changes. You realize that even things that seem unpleasant can become gentle if you do not resist them. There are days when you don't do much, only walk a short distance, then stop, rest, and look around. You don't feel like you are wasting time. You don't feel the need to do more. You understand that the journey is not measured by the quantity of what you experience, but by how you experience it. And in all those adventures, there is nothing too grand, no story that would leave others in awe. But to you, every day has meaning, not because it is special, but because you are truly in it. Sometimes you remember the girl by the shore, not as someone you need to return to, but as a part of the journey that has passed, a pocket of silence that changed the way you see the world. You don't seek her out, you don't hope to meet again, for you understand that some encounters only need to happen once to be enough. You continue to walk, not knowing exactly where you will arrive, but not needing to know either. Each footstep is already a part of the adventure. Each breath is already a part of the journey. You no longer need grand things to feel alive, only the small, the slow, and the real. In that continuation, you realize that adventure is not about going further or finding something newer. It is about being able to maintain your stillness, your lightness, and your presence in every moment, no matter where you are. It is this that makes your journey deeper, longer, and more complete in its own very special way. And as that journey gradually settles, not with a clear stopping point, but with a very light sensation within yourself, you realize that every path, every encounter, every quiet night, and every slow morning has merged into a very smooth flow. There is no longer a separation between the beginning and the end. There remains only a journey that is long, deep, and fulfilled in its own simple way. You are no longer standing amidst strange places. It is as if you are standing in the midst of yourself, where every memory and every sensation has settled, no longer turbulent, no longer hurried. There remains only a vast, open pocket of silence where you can let go completely, needing to hold on to nothing, needing to seek nothing. The final images drift by very lightly. The long road ahead, the wide sky above, the still water in the distance, and somewhere within all of it, there remains a small flicker of firelight, a quiet village, an encounter requiring no promises. None of these things need to be remembered vividly or given a name, for they have become a very natural part of you. Your breathing slows, growing deeper and more rhythmic. You are no longer following the story, no longer needing to know what happens next. For the story is no longer outside of you. It has become an internal sensation, a very light peace spreading out, holding you within this rest. You do not need to move forward, and you do not need to turn back. You only need to be there, in this moment, where everything is enough, where nothing more needs to be added, and nothing more needs to be kept. And as you gradually sink deeper into sleep, every sound and every image recedes. There remains only a very mellow, very deep silence, embracing you gently, just as the long night once did, wishing you a sleep that is truly deep, truly peaceful, and truly complete. Good night, everyone.